National League North review for December, let's get into it. So coming into December, we've got a very interesting title race with Fylde top of the table on 44 points, South Shields sit a point behind on 43 points, but they do have a game in hand, then Merthyr are in third on 40. Darlington, Scarborough, Kidderminster and Radcliffe make up the rest of the playoffs. At the bottom of the table, Leamington, Oxford, Hereford and Alfreton make up the relegation zone. Now let's start on Tuesday the 2nd of December, where we only had the one game played, and that was 7th place Radcliffe at home to 15th place Chester. It's been a disappointing first half of the season for Chester, who have ambitions of getting promoted, but since manager Callum McIntyre switched from a back 5 to a 4-4-2, performances and results have been getting better. It's a system that seems to suit them, as they've got two box-to-box midfielders in Lee and Bainbridge who can get up and down the pitch, and it gets the best out of their pacey wingers, particularly Pat Jones, who's an exceptional player for this level, and just 13 minutes in, Chester were already 2-0 up thanks to goals from Pat Jones and Tom Pearce. With this more attack-minded formation, Chester were always going to look a bit more vulnerable defensively, and Radcliffe did create plenty of chances in this one. 23 minutes in, winger Mickey Afayu, who's having a super season, beats his man, then scores a wonder goal to pull one back and make the game 2-1. This was an excellent game with both sides really going for it. Chester played some brilliant football going forwards, but there was also times they had to really dig deep to keep Radcliffe at bay, and in the 50th minute, Connor Wood's driven strike deflected off Rick Smith to win the game 3-1, as Chester move up into 11th and now sit just 3 points off the top 7. Now on to Saturday the 6th of December, where we had a full set of fixtures, and let's start with a massive game at the top of the table, as first place Fylde were at home to third place Merthyr. Newly promoted Merthyr have had a dream start to life in the National League North. The goal for them this season is to stay up, but a win could potentially take them just a point off top. And with Fylde struggling with injuries and their squad down to the bare bones, this was a huge opportunity for them, but Fylde still had a huge amount of quality on the pitch, and 64 minutes in, Danny Ormerod just about squeezed his effort past keeper Jamie Cogman for the 1-0 lead. Merthyr came into this game in red-hot form. They've won 8 games in a row where they've been scoring goals for fun. On this run, they've put 3 past Darlington and South Shields, 4 goals past Telford, Bedford and Leamington, then 6 goals past Alfreton. They've got the top scorer in the league in Ricardo Rees, who's got an incredible record this season with 23 goals in 20 games, so you'd have backed them to get the equaliser. But Fylde had keeper Zach Jones to thank, as he pulled off some super saves, and Fylde managed to hang on for a massive 1-0 win. So with Fylde winning, it was over to second place South Shields, who needed to beat Kidderminster, otherwise the gap to the top would be 4 points, and it was Kiddy who started the better side. They found a lot of joy from getting the ball in behind the South Shields defence, then cutting it back for an unmarked runner from deep, but they just couldn't quite find the finishing touch. It was only a matter of time before the goal came, and in the 41st minute, a David Davis header put Kidderminster 1-0 up. In the second half, Kiddy picked up where they left off. They were aggressive, they pressed hard, they were first to every ball and outmuscled the South Shield side, who didn't look up for the battle, and Cam Candola's wonderful solo goal put them 2-0 up. South Shields manager Ian Watson has got his side playing a possession style of play where they like to keep the ball on the ground and build up from the back, but as we're getting into winter, the pitch was not in good condition and they really struggled to get their passing game going. Shields did pull a goal back at the end, but this was a poor performance and they now find themselves 4 points behind league leaders Fylde. 4th place Darlington expected to continue their excellent run of form, travelling away to a struggling Oxford City side, but instead 23rd place Oxford pulled off one of the shock results of the season, putting 5 goals past Darlington. Now Oxford came into this game missing their 2 usual forwards in Josh Parker and Isaac Westendorf. This meant that manager Ross Jenkins gave his first start to youngster Braden Daniel, whose pace on the counter caused Darlington problems all afternoon. Then DJ Campton Surridge, who's normally limited to brief cameos off the bench, was given a chance in the starting 11 and he ended up scoring a hat-trick, so those forced changes worked out brilliantly for Oxford. As for Darlington, their motto this season has been to outscore the opposition. They've got some very talented attacking players, but defensively they've been far too open all season. They may be up in 4th, but they've actually conceded more goals than bottom of the table Leamington, and whilst Darlow can score goals for fun, they give up so many chances in games, but despite the heavy defeat they still remain in the playoffs, whilst Oxford City jump up to 22nd. Now let's move on to 2 sides who are just on the edge of the playoffs, as 8th place Marine were at home to 10th place Spennymoor, and the Moors have been in poor form as of late with only 1 win in their last 8, but just 2 minutes in, a lovely ball from Junior Mondell set away Rob Ramshaw, who prodded the ball in to put Spennymoor 1-0 up. With the amount of players Marine have got missing through injury, it really is amazing that they find themselves up near the playoffs. The squad is down to the bare bones, and it really did show as Marine looked flat and never looked like breaking down a well-organised Spennymoor side. Rob Ramshaw got his second of the game for a 2-0 win. That puts Spennymoor up into 8th. Now on to a must-win game for both sides in the relegation battle, as 20th place Peterborough Sports were at home to 22nd place Hereford, and this was one of those games where it looked like two poor sides. Neither looked likely to score until the 69th minute when Gus Mafuta took a touch and unleashed a superb strike to put Hereford 1-0 up. Rather than sitting back, Hereford manager Paul Caddis brought on Jaden White and Alani Edwards, two skillful young players that are full of energy. With these two running at the Peterborough defence, Hereford had their best spell of the game. In the 81st minute, Alani Edwards showed his skill to take on a couple of defenders, then finished brilliantly to give Hereford a massive 2-0 win. And as we look at the table, that win takes Hereford out of the relegation zone, with Peterborough Sports dropping into the bottom 4. Oxford's win means they sit 2 points from safety, with Leamington at the bottom starting to get cut adrift. At the top, Fylde go 4 points clear, but South Shields do have a game in hand. Kidderminster move up into 4th, whilst Curzon's 2-1 win against Alfreton moves them up into 7th, but it's all very tight in the playoffs, with 5th down to 11th only separated by 2 points. Now on to some midweek fixtures where we only had 2 games played, and let's start with 15th place Kings Lynn at home to 14th place Macclesfield. A win for either side would take them just 2 points off the playoffs, but it was Kings Lynn who started the better and took the lead just 2 minutes in thanks to Ross Crane. The Linnets should have been out of sight in that first half with the amount of chances they created, but they're lacking strikers at the moment. Both Adam Marriott and Goldo Mateo are out injured, which leaves them with just one fit striker, and that's 19-year-old LaShawn Seeley, who's learning his trade and looks a little bit lightweight up front on his own. At the weekend, Macclesfield did play 120 minutes in the FA Cup second round, so they could be forgiven for starting this one a little slowly. After a first half of trying to play passing football with not much success, for the second half they went a bit more direct, played long ball, and they were much better for that. They put Kings Lynn under a lot of pressure, and 81 minutes in, Ethan McLeod got them a deserved equaliser, and a 1-1 draw was how this one finished. Bottom of the table, Leamington sits 7 points from safety and were desperate for a win against Telford, and there was reasons to be positive in the first half of this game. They brought in a couple of young loanees, one of those being Seb Thompson, who was really impressive. His chip cross found Tim Berridge, who volleys it across for Frank Tatum, who somehow doesn't put the ball in the back of the net. When we look at the replay, it's hard to tell, but it does look as though it crosses the line, but the game stays at 0-0. Seb Thompson continued to cause problems with his driving runs forward, and his powerful strike wasn't a million miles away. Then in the 26th minute, Mitchell plays the ball through to Thompson, who's involved again, and his cross finds striker Tim Berridge, who volleys it in to put Leamington 1-0 up. It was a promising half an hour for Leamington, who looked like they could have a reasonable team now if these new loanees can start to gel. With their opponents AFC Telford having a dreadful away record, this was a great chance for Leamington to get a win, but Telford, who haven't won an away game for 11 months and have only won 3 away games out of their last 56 in the National League North, went on to play some excellent passing football in windy conditions. Goals from Hadley Allen, Dyer and Hilton turned the game around for a 3-1 win. Now on to Saturday the 13th of December, where due to the FA Trophy third round we only had 1 game played in the National League North, and it was a big chance for Spennymoor. A win against an out of form Buxton side would take them up into 4th, but 50 minutes in, a Josh Smith header put Buxton 1-0 up. Spennymoor have been so inconsistent as of late, but the return of their number 1 keeper Brad James and top scorer Glenn Taylor should be a big help. Taylor is Spennymoor's only recognised striker, so when he's missing they're forced to use either Junior Mondell or Corey McCune up front, but neither of them are natural number 9s, so when Taylor starts it makes a big difference, and it was a goal and an assist from Taylor that turned the game around to make it 2-1, but the lack of depth up front and reliance on a 35-year-old striker is concerning. Apart from Buxton's FA Cup run, it's been a pretty underwhelming league campaign for them so far. They've got a talented young squad, but it's not quite clicked for them yet. Their most talented youngster is Ty Sodji, who was tipped for big things when he was coming through at Man City, but a reoccurring hamstring injury hampered his development. City released him over the summer, but he's been superb for Buxton this season, and in the 89th minute, Sodji finished brilliantly to rescue a point as the game ended 2-2. Now on to Tuesday the 16th of December, where we had 4 games played, and it was a big one for second place South Shields. This was their game in hand over Fylde, so a win against 21st place Peterborough Sports would put them just a point off top spot, and South Shields started this game brilliantly. They were quick out the blocks, and just 5 minutes in, Dan Dodd's cross was turned in by Paul Blackett to put them 1-0 up. It looked like Peterborough were in for a hammering based on the opening 5 minutes, but they responded very well. Over the summer they signed one of the brightest prospects in non-league in 19-year-old forward Luca Miller from Kettering, and just 4 minutes after going behind, he produced a wonderful solo goal to score his 7th for the season and make the game 1-1. Over the last few games, South Shields have been nowhere near as dominant as their early season form, and they went on to make really hard work of this one. Shields liked to play out from the back, but at times it was like they were trying to gift Peterborough a goal, and despite them looking sloppy in possession and being way off their best, they did go on to win this game 2-1, thanks to a goal from Ollie Bainbridge, but a lot of credit has to go to Peterborough, who caused them a lot of problems, and if they continue to play like that, they should have enough about them to avoid the drop. In the battle for the playoffs, 6th place Scarborough were comfortably beaten 3-0 at home to Radcliffe. Scarborough started the season brilliantly, but it's now only 1 win in their last 9 as they drop out of the top 7. With their financial problems, they were going to need a lot of luck with injuries and to keep their squad fit to sustain a promotion push, but the squad has been decimated by injuries to key players, and until they get the likes of Walker, Maloney, Wiles, Alex Brown back fit, it's going to be a struggle for them to keep up. That being said, they were awful in this game, not a single shot on target. They were bullied by a very physical Radcliffe side whose defence easily dealt with the long balls they were launching forward. Then up front, Radcliffe had the quality in striker Rio Clegg and wingy Mickey Afeyu, who were both outstanding, and this win takes them up into 5th. Next up, Macclesfield beat Bedford 2-1, but the result and the football in this one is secondary, as Macclesfield player Ethan McLeod tragically died in a car accident on the way back from the game. Just devastating news, and the thoughts of everyone across football are with Ethan's friends and family at a difficult time. Finally, there's no highlights for this one, which is a shame as it was a massive game in the relegation battle, but Alfreton and Southport played out a 1-1 draw, which keeps things very tight. Obviously, Leamington at the bottom are getting cut adrift, but from Alfreton in 23rd to Bedford in 17th, they're only separated by 4 points, so it's going to be a fascinating relegation battle. At the top, South Shields are only a point behind Fylde, and they've now both played the same amount of games. Radcliffe's win puts them up into 5th, while Scarborough drop down into 8th. Macclesfield are down in 11th, but with 2 games in hand over sides around them, they could easily find themselves in a playoff spot in a few weeks' time. Now on to Saturday the 20th of December, and let's start with top of the table Fylde, who have won 9 away games on the bounce, but that run came to an end as they were beaten 1-0 to a Kidderminster side who have now beaten all of the current top 3. Kiddie are very hit and miss this season, but when they get the pressing game right, they can beat anyone in this league on their day. They set up to constantly close Fylde down and stop them from playing. That midfield trio of Davis, Cooper and Reynolds was immense. They were full of energy, never allowed Fylde time on the ball, but for that final 20 minutes we did see the downside of playing that high intensity style, as Kidderminster did run out of steam, the legs had gone and things got a little disorganised, but they held on for the win, which puts them up into 4th. So with Fylde losing, it was over to 2nd place South Shields. A win away at 10th place Chester would have them top at Christmas, but this was never going to be an easy game. After a poor start to the season, Chester have had an upturn in form, and 48 minutes in, Connor Woods put the home side 1-0 up from the spot. Chester played very well for the first 50 minutes and were more than matching their opponents, but once South Shields went 1 down, they stepped it up a gear and showed why they were at the top fighting for promotion. I'd mentioned before that South Shields haven't looked too convincing in the last few games, but this second half performance was them at their very best. They upped the tempo, played some slick football and scored 3 very well worked goals. In Sedwin Scott and Paul Blackett, they've got the best striking partnership in the league, and some of the link-up play was superb. They cut through Chester with ease, and a 3-1 win sees them leapfrog Fylde as South Shields go top of the table. Fifth place, Radcliffe made it back-to-back wins, beating bottom of the table Leamington with a 2-1 win. The standout moment came with Radcliffe's opening goal, which was a superb bit of skill and finish from top scorer Rio Clegg, and what a signing he has been. 4 seasons ago he was playing in the Manchester League all the way down in Step 7. Last season he was at Trafford FC in Step 4, where he was one of the standout performers in the division. Now he's made the jump up 2 divisions to Radcliffe, and he's taken to the level brilliantly, scoring 13 goals in 19 games, and he's proving to be a gem of a signing, but a 2-1 win keeps Radcliffe in 5th. Now on to Hereford, whose disaster of a season continues. A 4-2 defeat away at Chorley sees them drop into the relegation zone. So much has gone wrong for them, and it started with a poor pre-season where manager Paul Caddis's future was uncertain. He was strongly linked with the Fylde job, and he actually interviewed for the Partick Thistle job up in Scotland. Then by the time Caddis decided he was staying, Hereford were already behind others in their summer recruitment and pre-season preparation. 2 summer signings in striker Chris Rett and winger Kai Williams had their contracts cancelled within the first month, and after this game Caddis came out and said over the next few weeks expect 6 or 7 players to be leaving, which shows how poorly assembled the squad has been. They've also got a huge fixture backlog, with Hereford due to play 16 games over the next 8 weeks, which is really going to stretch their squad. They've been having problems with the drainage of their pitch and have had a couple of postponements already, and up next for them on Boxing Day it doesn't get any easier as they face rivals Kidderminster. It was a big game near the bottom as Southport and Worksop both sit just 2 points above safety. Southport were coming into this one on an 8-game unbeaten run, but they've also got a massively depleted squad at the minute. They're missing at least 5 starters, but despite this it was Southport who took the lead 13 minutes in thanks to Tom Moore. Worksop aren't a team with loads of technical quality, but they're physical and they bombard their opponents with high balls into the box. They put Southport under a lot of pressure, and it was going to be a big ask for them to hold on. Worksop really could have done with top scorer Liam Hughes, but he put on social media that he was leaving the club, so they are missing a centre forward to score goals. If they had Hughes on the pitch, I feel they would have got their equaliser sooner, but in the 75th minute Martin's strike was saved and Borough was on hand to finally get their equaliser as the game finished 1-1. So after those games, South Shield's leapfrog Fylde to go top of the table. Third place Merthyr's 2-1 win against Curzon Ashton keeps them 6 points off the top. A win for Scarborough moves them back into the playoffs into 6th, as Spennymoor's 1-1 draw against Oxford sees them drop out of the top 7. At the bottom it's very tight with Oxford, Hereford and Peterborough all level on points, whilst 23rd place Alfreton sit a point from safety. Now on to Boxing Day, where we had a full round of fixtures. We've spent a lot of time in this video focusing on the top 2, so we'll just give them brief mentions as they both won. First place South Shields are back to their best, demolishing Spennymoor 6-0, and second place Fylde got a 1-0 win at home to Chorley, so the top 2 remain the same. Unfortunately there's no highlights of this one, but third place Merthyr are doing their best at keeping up with the top 2. A 3-1 win away at Oxford means they're 6 points off the top spot. It was Derby Day at Edgar Street as a very impressive 4,600 fans were in attendance to watch Hereford get beat 1-0 against rivals Kidderminster. Hereford set up very defensively, they set up not to lose, and in the end they barely laid a glove on Kidderminster. They tried to create chances, but they just don't have the quality, and even playing 5 at the back they looked very shaky defensively. Kiddy weren't exactly amazing themselves, but they went 1-0 up early on, controlled the possession and saw the game out, and it's concerning times for Hereford, who dropped down to 22nd. It was 6 versus 7 for Scarborough at home to Darlington, but it was Darlow who won this game 1-0 thanks to a Toby Lee's header, and apart from that bizarre 5-1 loss earlier in the month, Darlow have been in superb form, but big concern for them at the minute is that at the start of January, Charlie Lennon and Max Howell's loan deals run out. They need to get them extended as they've both been superb. They have 2 very pacey and direct players, and if they can't get those loans extended till the end of the season, it would be a massive loss and could hurt Darlington. As for Scarborough, I've talked about their injuries, 8 first teamers missing. They've got nothing on the bench to try and change the game, and they're just about hanging on to that final playoff place in 7th. It was an emotional return to action for Macclesfield, who played their first game back since the tragic passing of Ethan McLeod. Before the game against Buxton, moving tributes were made and a minute's silence was impeccably observed in his memory. Players and staff also wore black armbands displaying EM20 in respect for their teammate who was tragically taken. Onto the football, this can't have been an easy game to play for the Macclesfield players, and both sides looked poor in the first half, but for the second half Buxton played with a lot more urgency, they were more direct than usual, and after a long ball forward from the keeper, Johnny Johnston finished brilliantly 51 minutes in to give Buxton the lead. This was a very fiery game, not helped by Macclesfield players feeling wronged when Luke Duffy appeared to be fouled inside the box, but the referee instead gave a free kick the other way and booked Duffy for diving. Then not long after, George Ward's header wrapped the game up to give Buxton a much needed 2-0 win to end their poor run of form. With everything that's happened to Macclesfield over the last 10 days, I don't want to be too harsh on them, but it wasn't a good performance. I wouldn't be surprised to see them spend some money over the next few weeks. They're looking very light in the midfield. They're not getting the best out of Mellor, Duffy and Johnson, which on paper is a very talented attacking trio, but maybe needs freshening up or some more competition for places. And with January filled with back-to-back Saturday-Tuesday games, the squad is really going to be stretched. It was a sellout on Merseyside in the local derby between 10th place Marine and 18th place Southport. We'll join this game at 1-1 as Marine launch a long ball into the box, and something that Southport have really struggled with this season is defending high balls into the box, and they end up giving away a penalty which was dispatched by Sinclair Smith to make it 2-1. Then 54 minutes in, Marine end up getting a second penalty which seemed quite harsh to me. The ball was blasted at his arm from very close range as he was charging the ball down, but the ref gives it, and Finn Sinclair Smith made no mistake again, scoring his second penalty of the game to make it 3-1. In the last match day, we spoke about Southport's injuries, and if you take away 5 key players out of any side, they'll struggle, but there's no excuse for how poor Southport were defensively. Marine's new striker Offren Zanzala, who worked his socks off and chased everything down, outmuscled Aaron Pickles for a goal on his debut to make the game 4-1. It was a very disciplined performance from Marine, who have got an injury crisis themselves. They were happy to sit back and let Southport have all the possession, and they did pull a goal back at the end to make it 4-2, but it was too little too late as Marine move up into 8th, just a point outside the playoffs. At the start of the video, I'd praised Chester and manager Callum McIntyre for seemingly turning things around and going on an unbeaten run, but a 3-1 defeat away at Telford makes it back-to-back defeats. The first half was abysmal. Chester were lucky it was only 2-0, and Callum McIntyre knew it because he made a quadruple change at half-time. They started off in a 4-4-2, but with central midfielder Lewis Lee missing, they brought in Declan Weeks to play alongside Bainbridge, but there was gaps all over the place, and Telford continually exploited them with their movement. I could go on about Chester, but I want to give Telford some credit because they've been excellent as of late. The spine of their team with Gracie in net, Carthorne at centre-back, Fletcher in midfield, then Stenson up front is so strong. The big thing that was holding them back has been their dreadful away record, but they seem to have sorted that out now with back-to-back away wins, and they now move up into 10th, 3 points from the playoff. After those games with the top 5 all winning, there's no change at the top. Darlington leapfrog Scarborough to go into 6th, Marine move up into 8th, and Telford climb up into 10th. At the bottom, Leamington gained a point with a draw against Bedford, but they still remain winless in 15, with Alfreton, Hereford and Oxford all losing. A draw for Perterborough Sports takes them out of the relegation zone and into 20th. Now on to Tuesday the 30th of December and the final match day of the video, but at the time of recording this the games have just finished so there's no highlights, but we'll run through some of the results and see how it affects the table. So at the top, second place Fylde slipped up, drawing 3-3 away at Radcliffe, so a 2-1 win for South Shields against Darlington now puts them 4 points clear at the top. Fourth place Kidderminster made it 5 wins on the spin, beating Telford 3-0. A 1-1 draw for Scarborough means they stay in 7th. Marine did have the chance to move into the top 7 with a win, but they were beaten 2-1 by 11th place Chorley. In the bottom half, Chester beat Macclesfield 3-0. A massive 4-2 win for 17th place Bedford gives them a bit of breathing space as they now sit 6 points above the relegation zone. As for the bottom 4, Alfreton move up into 21st after beating 24th place Leamington, who look destined for relegation now. Oxford and Peterborough played out a 0-0 draw, whilst 23rd place Hereford picked up a very respectable point, drawing 2-2 against 3rd place Merthyr. So that is the video done with, and join me next month where we'll review all the National League North action for January.